This week on Bill Moyers' Journal. As President Obama struggles over Afghanistan, echoes of his dilemma from the anguish of another president 4 decades ago.
Not a damn human thinks that 50,000 or 100,000 or 150,000 are going to end that war.
Stay tuned. Funding for Bill Moyers' Journal is provided by the Partridge Foundation, a John and Polly Guth charitable fund. Park Foundation, dedicated to heightening public awareness of critical issues. The Kohlberg Foundation, the Herb Alpert Foundation, Marilyn and Bob Clements and the Clements Foundation, the Fetzer Institute, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Public Welfare Foundation, and by our sole corporate sponsor, Mutual of America, providing retirement plan products and services to employers and individuals since 1945. Mutual of America, your retirement company. From our studios in New York, Bill Moyers. Welcome to the Journal. Our country wonders this weekend what is on President Obama's mind. He's apparently about to bring months of deliberation to a close and answer General Stanley McChrystal's request for more troops in Afghanistan. When he finally announces how many, why, and at what cost, he will most likely have defined his presidency, for the consequences will be far-reaching and unpredictable. As I read and listen and wait with all of you for answers, I've been thinking about the mind of another president, Lyndon B. Johnson. I was 30 years old, a White House assistant working on politics and domestic policy. I watched and listened as LBJ made his fateful decisions about Vietnam. He had been thrust into office by the murder of President John F. Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963, 46 years ago this weekend. And within hours of taking the oath of office, LBJ was told that the situation in South Vietnam was far worse than he knew. Less than 4 weeks before Kennedy's death, the South Vietnamese president himself had been assassinated in a coup by his generals, a coup the Kennedy administration had encouraged. South Vietnam was in chaos, and even as President Johnson tried to calm our own grieving country, in those first weeks in office, he received one briefing after another about the deteriorating situation in Southeast Asia. Lyndon Johnson secretly recorded many of the phone calls and conversations he had in the White House. In this broadcast, you're going to hear excerpts that reveal how he wrestled over what to do in Vietnam. There are hours of tapes, and the audio quality is not the best, but I've chosen a few to give you an insight into the mind of one president facing the choice of whether or not to send more and more soldiers to fight in a faraway and strange place. Granted, Barack Obama is not Lyndon Johnson. Afghanistan is not Vietnam, and this is now, not then. But listen, and you will hear echoes and refrains that resonate today.
Hello?
Mr. Bundy, calling the president.
Yes?
Secretary McNamara.
The president's coming right on.
Right.
Hello?
There were no BlackBerries or email then. Lyndon Johnson relied on the telephone and seemed always to have at least one in hand. He consulted not just within the government, but far and wide with everyone on everything. Here in office a little over 2 months, with bad news arriving daily from Vietnam, he reaches out to commiserate with an old friend, the newspaper publisher John Knight.
Well, what do you think we ought to do in Vietnam?
I never thought we belonged there. Now, that's a real tough one now, and I think President Kennedy thought at one time that we were overcommitted in that area.
Well, I opposed it in 54, but we're there now, and we're only one of 3 things you can do. One is run and let the dominoes start falling over. And God almighty, what they said about us leaving China would just be warming up compared to what they'd say now. I see Nixon's raising hell about it today, and Goldwater too. You can run, or you can fight, as we are doing, or you can sit down and agree to neutralize all of it.
Neutralizing South Vietnam would have meant an international agreement declaring the nation off limits to all outside influence, ending efforts by North Vietnam to reunite the two countries divided since 1954.
But nobody's going to neutralize North Vietnam, so that's totally impractical. And so it really boils down to one or two decisions, getting out or getting in.
Long range over there, the odds are certainly against us.
Yes, there's no question about that. And anytime you got that many people against you that far away from your home base, it's bad.
LBJ shares the prevailing Cold War mentality that communism is an aggressive menace that, like today's war on terror, had to be opposed no matter what or where. That's why JFK had sent several thousand military advisors to South Vietnam. Like Kennedy, Johnson hopes to keep our presence there to a low profile. As Republicans like former Vice President Richard Nixon and presidential hopeful Barry Goldwater call for an escalation of military force in Vietnam, LBJ wants to keep the situation on hold while he struggles to figure out the options with Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara.